Newton Boris Schwartz is an attorney from Houston who's filed a lawsuit once and for all asking for a determination on the citizenship of GOP presidential candidate Ted Cruz. Not a question of whether or not he's a citizen, but a question is a naturalized citizen that can be eligible to become the next president of the United States. The lawsuit filed by Newton Boris Schwartz alleges basically saying it's time to get this answer out there once and for all. Donald Trump has been talking about it. How about a solution before we move forward? You find that, Mr. Schwartz, as being the most important thing. Here we are going into a primary season, and people could be voting for somebody that ultimately might not be eligible to be president. Is that your take?
That's correct. Exactly.
And so how now do you feel, have you had any word, this was filed last week, any word that the Supreme Court or which court will see this first?
No,
how does that
the
happen?
The first court to hear it will be the Federal District Court here in Houston.
In Houston.
From there, it has to go through the Court of Appeals, which is in New Orleans for Texas, and then it goes to the Supreme Court. So unless it's on a fast track, which we're trying to put it on,
right.
we don't need any discovery depositions or any of those things because the facts are stipulated. And I filed an amended to the suit yesterday to show that Senator Cruz, one, which we knew about, renounced his Canadianship only in 2014 on May 14th, but we further found that his mother and both of his parents had voted in the Canadian election in Calgary, and this is all public record in the courthouse now. They voted in 1974, so they were still Canadian citizens. And in our lawsuit, we say, for all those reasons, he can't be a natural-born American citizen.
Would this not
be...
It's not
different than Rubio, is,
right.
As far as I know, is cleared to be a candidate, just like was Senator McCain, so was, Governor... Well, I don't know about Governor Romney. That's 1968, way before, my time.
Well, McCain was born
we want it brought to a head now and not have a... if you had an eligible player on the Patriots, they wouldn't play the season and then find out he was ineligible when they get to the Super Bowl.
Sure.
And this is a lot more important than that.
Well, I find it very interesting, very, very interesting that this part of this story, I didn't know the part about his parents voting in the Canadian elections. That's something that we're not hearing much about. We've kind of discounted this.
It's been filed in court last night here in Texas, and the New York Times will be getting it today.
Got it.
They asked for a request for it, and we're sending copies. When we left here yesterday, we issued service for Senator Cruz through the mail for 3 things. So, you can't do it all at once.
Sure.
So,
will you send that to us, too?
That lawsuit is publicly on file. If you get on PACER, P-A-C-E-R, you could pick it up. Is it on yet this morning, Dora? It's not on yet. It's there, but they say you have to be a member.
Okay. Well, maybe we can get you. I'll give you to Andrew when we're done here, and maybe we can get a hold of it. But so the process by which this goes, ultimately, we know that it's going to go through the smaller courts and work its way up to the Supreme Court. But ultimately, you need the Supreme Court most likely to rule on this. Is there a timeline that you see that this can be done in time?
It could be, but I've done everything I do to expedite it. But and I'm following the same procedure Donald Trump suggested. Senator Cruz could expedite this by just joining in the suit, and we agree to all the facts. He may not like those latest facts about his parents voting in Calgary in 1974 when he was 4 years old, but they had allegiance, and Canadian law doesn't allow for dual citizenship, so they've never announced their Canadian citizenship as far as we can find out. So the record could go up real quickly, and we don't care which way. All we do, obviously we care, but the judge here and even the court in New Orleans, ruled against Texas, against Obama administration on the 11 million illegal aliens. But today the Supreme Court's granting it, and they're hearing it on March 2nd, which is the day after the primaries in Texas. So yes, it could be expedited, and Senator Cruz could do more than anybody else to expedite it. But so far, we haven't even heard from him.
Well, this is really breaking news that we're hearing about here today. I've not heard anyone talk about this part of the.
I just filed it yesterday.
Yeah. So, right. Okay.
You've had 12 hours.
Sure, but you obviously had to. I understand that, but you've had to uncover that, and that's an element of this whole thing that Ted Cruz has not ever talked about. He said that this is really ridiculous. And there's no credence.
It gets less and less ridiculous all the time.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, some people would ask, are you politically motivated here? And
I've refused money. People call me all over the country. I said I'm not taking money from anybody. I did have a potential guy from California on a copyright on a song want to hire me. He's the only one because there's no connection with the election. But no, right now, if I had to vote, which I can vote absentee by February 17th here in Texas, I would probably vote for Bernie Sanders. But
okay,
that's what things have changed a lot. Elizabeth Warren's not running. I voted Republican before. I voted Democratic more than Republican, and voted for an independent once.
Is there a Republican out there that you would you'd be okay with?
Well, I compared to Cruz, I would have been okay with Governor Perry. At least he let illegal aliens come and go in the school system in Texas, which I can't think many other things good to say about him, but I can say that.
Yeah.
The Governor Walker was anti-union, but I don't think any of them are as bad as Cruz is, except maybe Trump.
Are you surprised? I discovered this story last week. Are you surprised that this hasn't warranted more of a public hasn't warranted more public attention? Are you surprised by that?
Well, listen. I've gotten hundreds of replies. About 10% of them hate mail, which I don't even pay attention to. But as it gets closer, and these facts are revealed that I told you today, you're actually the second person. I did Telemundo interviewed me last night, and I brought up this, and they didn't know it. They were on for a half-hour video broadcast all over Mexico and South America and Texas, in Southwest U.S. And they had had me on. I don't know how much they'll cut of it, but it was a 30-minute television interview in person.
Now, let me ask you this: you've never, I've never heard your name before. I'm assuming in your area.
I was a federal prosecutor from 1954 when I got out of law school. I'm 60. I've been a lawyer 61 years. I'm 85 years old. I was a a JAG officer in the Air Force 2 years, and I was 3 years a federal prosecutor in Houston, which means we cover Brownsville to Laredo, 300 miles of the Rio Grande, and during that time we would have an eviction of thousands of aliens by put them in a gym. We didn't even have a courthouse at that time, and between Laredo and Brownsville, and we would, under the Eisenhower administration, we would deport them, and half of them would come back later, and we'd deport them again. That was the law then.
I'm not questioning your resume, and I'm not questioning your abilities by any means.
No, I'm mainly a trial lawyer. 99% of my clients, numerically, are outside the United States. I've just won a case in Spain for 45 Russian school children that were killed in a plane crash. I'm representing Spanish people. I've got in Panama and in all the Central American countries. I have clients. So, I don't need the business.
Sure, but I guess my question would be, why you in this case? Normally, I would have assumed a candidate would have brought this case forward, or maybe Cruz himself.
I would assume the same thing, too, but they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't. And you're feeling that it needs to
be... The people that have called me to intervene or join in the suit are people I've never heard of who are, say, they're presidential candidates. Well, they're borderline, and I've never heard of them. They've got a right to intervene. I've told them, welcome to the suit. You can you can either join at free door. Is there a fee for intervention? No, there's no fee. They can join in the case free.
Got it. And again, you're just reiterating what you've said here. Your reason for getting in is your belief that this is important for America to be resolved before we vote.
All right, and that nobody else has done it until now.
Yeah, got it. All right, well, again, that breaking news, the dates, the year that you say that the parents of Ted Cruz voted Canadian in the Canadian election were?
They voted in Calgary 1974, and I've got the voting roll to show they voted is filed as Exhibit H3 in the federal court here in Houston. It's Eleanor Cruz, the mother, and Raphael, shown as self-employed.
Got it.
They were two of thousands of voters in Canada. So, and they've never given up, their Canadian allegiance. In fact, Senator Cruz had dual citizenship till less than 2 years ago. So,
but I thought you said
those are going to be additional factors that disqualify him that wouldn't disqualify many other foreign-born representatives if they were, like McCain was. Parents were in the military
base. Yeah.
They were citizens,
Correct me, though. Explain to me, because earlier you said that Canada didn't allow dual citizenship.
No, that's the Canadian law. They don't permit dual citizenship.
Well,
so I don't know.
So how could Cruz have been a dual citizen?
Well, he was until he renounced it a month ago. Evidently, the Canadian law, like the American law, has changed from time to time.
Got it.
Before 1967, it was one thing, and it was one other one after he was born in 1970. So I've done a summary of that. It's in the new lawsuit.
You know what I find interesting? Again, we're talking to Houston attorney Newton Boris Schwartz. This
Senior.
is
I have a son by the
senior,
same name.
And this is a story that I believe, especially after this news, you're going to be hearing a lot about over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours. But do you find it interesting? And you say you've been an attorney all over the world and representing people throughout the world. Do you find it interesting that how do you think we would be reacting if Cruz's citizenship was a dual citizenship, was affiliated with maybe Mexico or Cuba or another country?
Well, it is affiliated through his father with Cuba, and
right.
That's what was important 200 years ago. They were concerned about people being pro-British people getting in the thing. Well, next to North Korea and now even Iran, I would think Cuba is still on our number 3 list of enemies, even though the president has relaxed travel.
Sure.
They're keeping one of our surface air-to-ground missiles that they've kept for a year and a half. That's as bad as anything Iran does. Besides mistreating their own people, which they have the right to do that.
I guess where I'm going is imagine the uproar if we were talking not about Canada, but we were talking about Iran or a Middle Eastern company. It'd be completely
or North Korea.
Or right. North Korea. It'd be a completely different deal here. Very, very interesting.
Very good. Well, listen, I thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Newton Boris Schwartz.
Sorry I can't hear your show. You're Bill Keeler?
I am, yes. Yeah.
I told them, I said, I'm dating myself, but when I was growing up, the first movie made was by Al Jolson. His wife was named Ruby Keeler, who was a movie star in the 20s and 30s.
It's funny. My wife and I had a big argument over my daughter, who's now 13, and I wanted her name to be Ruby. And my wife didn't even want that to be the middle name, so it is Grace Elizabeth Leslie. We got 2 middle names out of it, but no Ruby, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Very good. Hold on tight. We want to make sure we get those documents. Andrew's going to speak with you for just a moment.
Sure.
Thanks for taking the time. Thank you. Newton Boris Schwartz, Sr., the Houston attorney who is breaking news on this radio program here this morning. That has not been heard anywhere, I guess, in the English language. Telemundo might have had it last night, but I've not heard this anywhere. Does this make it feel like maybe this changes...
This changes things a lot.
This changes things a lot. All of a sudden, which I thought this was just ridiculous, all of a sudden, now I guess the waters have been muddied here a little bit.
I'm confused, though, as to how he made the argument that the parents can't have dual citizenship because if they voted in the election, you can't have dual citizenship, so basically they were Canadian citizens. But it works. It would apply for Cruz.
Here's how this works.
Get that.
In my opinion, here's how this works: is that no one pays attention until somebody pays attention. So if he gains citizenship in the United States, I'm sure the red flags weren't rising in Canada.
Right.
But now all of a sudden attention has been brought to it. It really doesn't matter what Canadian law is here at all. All that matters is the United States law, and
you can be a dual citizen, though.
You can be, but the question, though, remains: were they dual citizens up until he was age what in the 1970s?
And I don't know
if they're voting in Canada as Canadian citizens, that does change a lot here.
But it's not. You don't necessarily have to be a declared dual citizen to have dual citizenship. Let's say. Privileges, not really rights. How many people in this country move from state to state? You don't renege your citizenship of your residency in one state. You may still have a voting card in one state. You're moving to another state. That's probably what happened here. And
right, and the easy, and
no one caught it
prior to 9/11. The easy transition from going back and forth from Canada to the United States. Really, not all that much attention paid to that.
Right.
Which is why I said, could you imagine if this was Saudi Arabia? Or it was Iran, or something that we would be, he wouldn't even be a candidate right now. So I'm not a legal expert on this stuff, nor would I be an expert when it comes to constitutional law. Ted Cruz is, however, very interesting to see if he knew this portion of his early years, or if this is just something that's been kept quiet, but this attorney feels like he has maybe the smoking gun. Very, very interesting stuff. You'll hear more about that today. And again, pretty amazing that that's not been anywhere else. Breaking news here this morning on WIBX.